Choke no joke. I'm in the building. All right. Now, depending on my guests, it's up to them. Maybe at the end of the show, we might take some calls and let y'all have a few questions because I'm sure y'all might have a lot of questions for my guests. Now, I think I'm pronouncing his last name right. Y'all know I'll butcher up a name in a second, so bear with me. You know, uh, but many of y'all like myself been checking out this podcast on maybe on your Apple phone or whatever called The Dossier. And The Dossier was it's like a whole series that was done by a guy named Don and Phil Carson on the Biggie murder, on the murder case of Biggie or whatever. These guys did so much research, and the Phil Carson was on the case. But I'm gonna let Don explain it more because I got Don in the building tonight. You know, so this is gonna get very interesting because I got a lot of questions and I got a lot of theories in this whole Biggie and Tupac murder. I hope Wedgie looking, you know, I know Wedgie watching. Wedgie watching, that sounds funny. Right? But I got my theories. I want to ask him how he feel about my theories. I'm gonna ask him, you know, about his theories. We're gonna talk about season 1 of The Dossier. And then at the end of the show, to keep y'all watching, we're gonna see that what's going on with season 2, which is getting ready to come up in I think like a week or two. And Don's gonna have, you know, address all that. But may I open the stage to Don. I believe it's Sikorski. He's going to correct me if I'm wrong. But he's in the building, y'all. All right. What's going on, Don?
What's happening? How are you?
Did I pronounce your name right?
You did. Sikorski. You got it right the first time.
Is that Italian?
That's actually a Polish name.
Polish.
Yeah,
okay.
My dad is Polish.
Got you. So tell us where you from originally.
So I grew up in Norwalk, Connecticut. When I was 18, I went to NYU, moved to New York City and lived in New York City for the next 25 years. So I've lived in New York City and LA at times, and Connecticut at times, but originally from Connecticut.
Are you familiar with Old Darien?
I am. Yes, sir.
When I was 14 years old, I live in the Bronx, the Northeast Bronx, Edenwald Projects. They had a program kind of like summer youth, but it wasn't summer youth. And they would pick us up in the Bronx, in Co-op City, and we would go, they would take us up to Old Darien, and I worked at McDonald's up there from 4 to midnight. And then it would be a school bus. We had to go over to Co-op City in a school bus to shuttle kids from that area up to Old Darien, Connecticut. And I worked at McDonald's up there.
So you grew up in Co-op City?
No, I grew up in Edenwald in the Bronx.
Oh,
not
you did?
like
Okay.
10 minutes from Co-op. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. So other than that, where you grew up at, tell us about your background.
Yeah, so I went to NYU and was studying journalism, and I kind of didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't know if I wanted to do documentaries. I didn't know if I wanted to write. At the time in New York City, this is roughly early 2000s, there was always this rumor that there was this secret unit within the New York City Police Department that had the hip hop industry under surveillance. They were called the hip hop cops.
Yeah, I know
So
those guys.
yeah, I went up to B&H Photo. I bought a camera, and at that time, through another friend of mine, I was friends with a guy by the name of Tone Boots. And Tone Boots used to work for Jimmy Henchman.
I know Tone Boots.
Yeah, he worked for Jimmy Henchman. He was a writer at XXL for a period of time. And I told Tone about this idea, and he started to sort of introduce me to people, and I started to interview people. I think one of my first interviews in an office building was Joe Budden about the idea of the hip hop police. To make a long story short, I spent 2 years documenting the story of the hip hop police, and I was able to get the actual book. I sent a request into the Miami Police Department and said, "Hey, do you have this secret book that they have been compiling on everyone in hip hop?" And a woman within the police department FedExed the book. She shouldn't have done that, but I still have it. I could show you, at a certain point if you wanted to see it, but it had everyone in it. All the street guys from the 90s, all of, the artists today. And that film was called Rap Sheet, Hip Hop and the Cops. And that really was my film school in a way. And after that, I decided to do a documentary about the war in Iraq. And I looked at a group of Marines who were charged with murder, and they were in jail at Camp Pendleton out in San Diego. And they had framed a murder scene in Iraq at the time. And I followed them through the military justice system. So those really were my, like, for lack of a better word, sort of film school, right? From there, I started to do more projects in television. I was able to get an agent, and my career, I've been lucky. I've done everything from documentaries to feature films to podcasts. But I've always had a fascination for a few things. One is the criminal justice system. Secondarily is just cops and robbers, right? Everyone is fascinated with cops and robbers. And I think throughout my career, I've always tried to tell those stories from different perspectives and different angles. Specifically with, the stuff we're speaking about, tonight. I think what I've always tried to do is back up the information that I have with documents, right? And being able to source those documents. I think what's happened in our world today is, I'll use a few examples, but I think there's so much misinformation that exists that the truth of what happened kind of gets hidden, right?
Right.
And it happens with a lot of stories. I just did a